General Hospital. The Enigma of Willow Tate, a life spent in submission. In the ever-shifting, high-stakes world of General Hospital, few characters have undergone a transformation as emotionally tangled and psychologically fractured as Willow Tate. Once a bright-eyed schoolteacher seeking purpose and redemption after a dark past, Willow has evolved, or perhaps devolved, into a woman caught in an endless cycle of acquiescence. Her identity bends not only to the tides of her relationships but to the unspoken expectations of those who hold sway over her life. On the surface, she is a symbol of gentle resilience. But dig deeper, and what emerges is a portrait of a woman so shaped by early trauma and conditional love that her every decision feels less like agency and more like a conditioned response. Willow's life story is one marred by the theft of choice. Born into a world she never chose, raised under the rigid dominion of a cult, and trained to submit to the whims of men who styled themselves as saviors, Willow never stood a chance at developing the kind of inner compass that grounds a person in their own convictions. Her childhood was not one of nurturing or safety, but of obedience. Every breath she took was measured against the needs of others, every action calculated to please or pacify a man in power. That template would be tragically replicated throughout her adult life, disguised in the form of love and loyalty. Her relationship history is emblematic of this pattern. Whether with Chase, Michael, or now Drew, Willow doesn't fall in love in the traditional sense, she adapts. She conforms. She shifts herself into what she believes each man desires, her self-worth tied tightly to their approval. When she was with Chase, she was compassionate and supportive, playing the part of the doting partner. With Michael, she adopted the role of the perfect mother and dutiful wife. And now with Drew, she's something more nebulous, a pawn in a game he believes he's cleverly manipulating, all under the guise of protecting her and their children. One of the most telling indicators of Willow's fractured psyche is her long-standing, complex relationship with Wiley. For more than a year, she lived under the belief that Wiley was her biological child. Even when she learned the truth, that the baby she carried had died, and Wiley was her nephew, the emotional bond was unbreakable. In many ways, her marriage to Michael felt less like a romantic union and more like an emotional lifeline to Wiley. Loving the child became her identity, and in order to maintain proximity to him, she surrendered herself to Michael's version of domesticity. And Michael, for all his surface-level charm, has become an increasingly toxic presence. Entitled and emotionally rigid, he has shaped Willow into the kind of woman who asks no questions, offers no resistance, and exists primarily to serve his vision of family. He doesn't abuse her in the traditional, obvious ways, but emotional coercion can be just as damaging. He makes decisions without her input, expects compliance without discussion, and cloaks it all in the language of love and security. It's a dynamic Willow learned well in her formative years. Shiloh may be dead, but the ghost of his control lingers, manifesting now in the very man she calls her husband. And yet, Drew is not the salvation he pretends to be. Initially cast as a man who truly sees Willow, who values her agency and independence, his behavior tells a different story. He's no brute like Shiloh, and he's certainly not as smugly manipulative as Michael. But that doesn't mean he's innocent. He demands in softer tones, cloaks control in charm, and persuades Willow with words that sound like choices but function as commands. When he asked her to sign over custody of her child, she did it without protest. When he pushed her to wage war against Michael for legal control, she complied. Is this love? Is it devotion? Or is it the latest iteration of Willow's deeply embedded trauma response? Because from the outside, it doesn't look like empowerment. It looks like re-traumatization. It looks like history repeating itself in the cruelest of ways. The tragedy of Willow isn't just that she lacks a strong will, it's that she was never allowed to develop one. She has been shaped and reshaped by everyone around her, from Harmony to Shiloh to Michael to Drew. Every time she begins to forge an identity, someone new steps in to mold it into something more convenient, more palatable, more useful. And each time, Willow complies, not because she's weak, but because she's still living in survival mode. Even her evolving feelings toward Nina, the biological mother she once loathed, speak volumes about her internal conflict. What began as righteous anger has softened into something approaching tolerance, perhaps even understanding. But is this growth, or simply another adaptation? Another instance where Willow reshapes herself to maintain peace in a world that has never offered her safety? It's time for Willow to reclaim herself. To recognize that love should not require transformation, that partnership is not obedience, and that motherhood does not demand self-erasure. The journey ahead will not be easy. She will have to face the reality that much of what she's believed about love, family, and herself has been filtered through the lens of a traumatized child still trying to win the approval of men who never truly saw her. If General Hospital has any real interest in empowering Willow, it must break this cycle. The show must allow her to confront her past, understand the psychological patterns that bind her, and make choices rooted in her own values, not those handed down by the loudest man in the room. Until then, Willow will remain what she has always been, a reflection of others, flickering and fading with every shift in the emotional weather. And that, perhaps, is the greatest tragedy of all.